Right, well, here we are. I was browsing Quora and stumbled on the question, if INTPs are so smart, why do they suck at school? And I'm going to kind of expand on this in the sense of answering the question, if INTPs are so smart, why do they suck at their life until their mid-20s? And the reason I think has a lot to do with point number 2 in my list. But all the reasons are kind of intertwined, and so we kind of just have to unpackage it little bit by little bit. So if you're like me and want to actually get to the bottom of this question, we're going to have to take a few bunny trails, a few tangents here and there, and I'll invite you to join me here. School and life as well, to some great extent, is designed to be easy for ISFJs and ISTJs. And then ESFJs, and then ESTJs are kind of like the schoolyard bully type, so school isn't necessarily designed to be easy for them, although it, with the zero tolerance policies, has become a lot easier for them because they can just act like a bully and it only bites them once they reach adulthood. Anyhow, the pedagogical approach of schooling revolves around taking a subject matter and breaking it into little teeny pieces and serving these little teeny bite-sized pieces one at a time to the students until they reach some 70% level of mastery or whatever it might be. And then, some people get better than 70% mastery and other people get worse. And, well, generally over the course of the past 2 decades, the quality of the education has gone down considerably in many places due to the fact that more and more people are being expected to be able to do things that are just beyond them. And so, increasingly, school is designed for the lowest common denominator as opposed to the more intelligent kinds. And INTP males are 3 to 1 going to be gifted, and INTP females are nearly 7 to 1 going to be gifted. And so the school itself is designed to deal with these little teeny things and not make connections between things that are seem disparate. And so whereas the INTP wants to go and see how everything's interconnected, school doesn't make those connections for the INTP. And so people are kind of, well, the INTP is just going to be stuck there. The testing goes kind of the same way. You get tested on this one sliver of material on the one exam, and then one on the next test, and then one on the next test, and then those 3 ones that you just got, you'll get tested on in the midterm, and then you do another few of those, and then those you'll get tested on in the final, or the final will be cumulative, or whatever. And you've learned all these different little slivers of material, and then you go on to your next class, and, well, it's not related. Or it's very tangentially related, and nobody ever bothers to make the connections. And so the INTP goes into this whole thing and wonders, what's the point? What's the point of learning all these disparate little pieces of information? And it kind of goes that way for life, too. That INTPs synthesize the information together to try to come up with a more cohesive picture of reality. INTPs are largely motivated by truth. They want to get down to the truth of the matter. They want to get down to the bottom of the matter. They want to make sure they have a thorough understanding of what's going on, and they can't do that unless they've seen everything from every possible angle and gotten a chance to explore. And, well, school doesn't provide a chance to explore. It provides you a chance to sit down and shut up and, every 65 minutes go down to another different place and sit down and shut up. So school is not designed for the thinking pattern of the INTP, and neither is the world of adults unless you get into some of the more technical or complex fields, which interestingly are having gatekeepers that still think in this simple way, unless you know the right people. And because of the way the INTP relates to the world, often an INTP will mature late. And it has to do with the fact that they need to see every single little sliver first before they get the big picture. And they don't feel comfortable operating on inadequate information. Now, I'm not an INTP. I'm an INTJ. And that means that, well, compared to many INTPs, I'm okay with having a slightly more nebulous view of things, but I get to the big picture faster. And so INTJs can kind of fake it more easily than INTPs, because INTPs will literally be paralyzed in terms of seeing all the possible decisions in front of them, and will prefer instead to use their time to just, sit back with a book, or sit back in a library, or sit back and consume information, and come to their judgments inside up in here, and only do something when they're relatively certain it's a good idea. I think that's largely due to the fact that their surroundings are not developmentally appropriate. INTPs, people in general like to dish out things one little element at a time, because that's how most people understand it. And if most people are running most things, well, it's rare that an INTP will have a parent or a teacher or a mentor that will actually pull them through life in a way that the INTP can relate to and understand. So, if a parent or a teacher or a mentor is doing the right thing, you'll give the whole picture, or at least as much of the whole picture as can possibly be given, and give the opportunity to explore. And definitely don't parse the day entirely into 65-minute segments where they go from one class to another and learn all these disparate pieces of information and get tested on them in a disparate fashion. If an INTP is put into a position where he can explore, he will flourish much more than if he's put into a position where he's led by the nose, kicking and screaming through the subject material. And a lot of this is kind of enabled, almost. This slow maturing is enabled by society in some strange fashion. And that's in that INTPs have a long time preference. So that means that they don't think so much about the short term or the medium term. They think about what they're interested in and what they could see themselves, pursuing their interests for the rest of their lives. So if you're thinking about long-term interests, you're thinking only about the future, only thinking really far that way. You're thinking, okay, future. Then that means things like brushing your teeth, combing your hair, taking a shower, eating your food. All those things wind up becoming secondary to the future. And it's kind of weird, but many people's solution of, okay, let's just go and take care of the INTP, let him sit in his room all by himself and not do anything outside of there. People just take that as the easy way out, right? But where the real thing that needs to happen is responsibility needs to be forced upon the INTP. It can be one of those things that, hey, and you can do this when they're little too. Not too little, but when they're sufficiently old to grasp, things like the value of money. And you can teach them the value of money by saying, okay, here is the money that we would have spent on your food for the week. We're going to go to the store, and you are going to buy food that fits these criteria. A, it's going to be within the budget that I give you. B, it's going to be healthy. It's going to sustain your life and body. And C, you will be responsible for getting it and for preparing it if it isn't, let's say one meal a week that we all decide to have as a family, or one meal a day that we all decide to have as a family. You're responsible for your breakfast and your lunch, and you can come and have dinner with us, for example. But you give some set of constraints in which they can think, and then they'll go and decide, okay, it needs to be healthy, so that means I'm going to have to go and get some vegetables. Okay, I can't just go and get mac and cheese or whatever, or I'm going to probably need some protein too. And then they're going to go and want to research this, and then you can go and say, okay, here's a book on nutrition. You can read that. You can go online and say, okay, here's the cost of living index for our city, so this is how much all the different things can be expected to cost. And so they can go and put together their own meal plan, and give them a little time to think about it. Then you go to the store and execute on that meal plan. All right? And that's some level of responsibility that you can give an INTP when he's in the single digits. You can do the same thing for, okay, if there's things that really need to be done, that one sliver of reality that needs to be kept in order, like the room needs to be clean or whatever. Then you say, okay, cleaning, if once your room is clean, you will clean your room by 10 o'clock this morning, because at 10:01, I am going to the library, and you're not getting into the car until your room is clean. So you're going to be stuck until 10:01 tomorrow morning, or whatever it might be. Times are contrived, but the point remains that the carrot works a whole lot better than the stick with the INTP, and you can use the opportunity to do all these lovely things as incentives to do all the stupid, boring stuff that we all have to do anyway. And so you force them into habits or thinking patterns that get them to deal properly with the short term. Do your homework, learn your stuff, etc. And then after that, you can have whatever the reward is. And it doesn't need to be anything that you consider big or expensive or horrible, but it just needs to be something that they value, that they need to delay their gratification to receive until after they've done their responsible things. And that could be, doing well at school. Now, granted, I think that homeschooling is a much better option, especially for the INTP. But let's say that you're absolutely stuck with the paradigm of the current school system. Then, getting good grades can be a prerequisite for doing things that they like. We'll get to go visit the birthplace of Thomas Edison if you get an A in this one, I don't know, whatever class it is that you don't like. And so you capitalize on their long-term time preference, and in that way force them to deal with the more short and medium term stuff. And you can't do any of this without realizing that INTPs are independent minded. INTPs will have feelings, certainly, but they won't care so much about the feelings as about the truth. And so, if you're saying and or doing things that aren't true, or aren't commensurate with reality, or aren't commensurate with their perception of reality, you're going to have a very hard time getting them to do anything. And you have most of these people realizing that school is a gigantic waste of time for them, that they could learn this stuff way more efficiently by themselves, and have all the time for all the other exploration and all the other activities they want to have. And in order to actually deal well with the INTP, you have to concede that point. You can't just go and say, oh, well, you need to do school because you need to do school because you need to do school. It's like, well, yeah, you need to do school. Or at least you need to be well educated because your future depends on it. And being poorly educated is a surefire way to not have very good future prospects. But you need to provide them the opportunity to get the education that they're actually craving, the ability to seek the truth that they're actually craving, as opposed to forcing them to suffer through the meat grinder of just throwing little tidbits of information that are completely inadequate for their curious and often very precocious mind. So I hope that I've at least given you a little bit of food for thought. I know I could talk about this subject for hours and definitely expand on some of these points a whole lot more, and I might decide to do that sometime. I might not. But getting back to the main point, if INTPs are so smart, why do they suck at school? They suck at school because they are so smart. They suck at school because school is not right for them. And they suck at the early stages of life because it takes them that long to orient themselves in a world full of people that do not think like they do. And if you want to do something about this issue, you will encourage them to, in whatever clumsy fashion they do, take responsibility, forcing them in certain ways if you must, as parents, teachers, etc. And treat them as competent adults at a much earlier phase in life than you would for some of the people that need everything spelled out to them a little bit at a time. So, yeah, the INTP needs more autonomy and more responsibility in order to thrive. So if you can give that to the INTPs in your life, especially as they're young and as they're developing and as they're maturing, you will be doing them an exceedingly big favor. That's all we have time for today. I'll look forward to seeing you at some later point. Bye.